Alex, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
It's great to be here, Maria. Yes, I'm really good. Thanks. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm great. So I think you've just come back from an event, haven't you? Have you been speaking?
Yeah, I've just got back from Leeds about half an hour ago. Luckily, without too much drama on the trains, but I've been speaking to a leadership event this morning. It's a regular client actually, and it's one that I always enjoy doing. And so, yeah, great feedback, and it's caught me right in the kind of perfect moment. Really, I'm coming back from the talk with that buzz that we get. So great to be on the interview.
Fantastic. So in the introduction, we covered some of the amazing things that you've achieved. And if anybody's watching on video, I think, is that the Olympic torch behind you?
Yeah, so in the corners is my keepsake from the torch relay in 2012. Had the honour of being a torchbearer. So yeah, now I've got the torch and show, as well as a picture of my dogs, which is kind of a bit more human. Um, yeah, so it's a nice keepsake for sure.
Fantastic. Everybody who loves dogs is welcome here. So listen, Alex, out of all the adventures and achievements, how do you decide what you're going to talk about when you're booked to speak?
Good question. I mean, I guess the challenge with my speaking is that as I do more and more adventures and challenges, I have more content, and then I have the same time to talk. So I can't speak faster. I just have to really pick and choose. I think Everest obviously has that natural appeal. People have this fascination; they want to hear about it, and I guess really has been the bulk of my journey. So it tends to focus around Everest, and then kind of what's happened since and what I did before then. Um, but if the talk is focused on a certain theme, for example, mental health, I'll talk more about my Climb the UK challenge in 2017, which is all about trying to get people involved and talking about mental health across the UK. So it's a case by case, but Everest is naturally a huge part of my journey, really.
And let's be honest, there are a lot of speakers now who are adventurers, who have an Everest story,
Yeah,
whether it's the real Everest or their own Everest. So how do you compete with that?
good question. I think it's a good point you said about we all have our own Everest, and that's one of my main kind of themes now is finding our own Everest, and I've kind of found a new one, and putting that obviously relative because a lot of the people I speak to would never dream of climbing Everest. But I think I don't really compete in that sense because I've not climbed Everest. I've kind of failed twice, but in some ways that's given me a very unique experience. I was there 2014 when there was a big avalanche which tragically killed 16 people. I was there the year after that when there was the Nepal earthquake, and myself and my team had a very lucky escape. And so in some ways had two very different experiences that taught me a lot more than perhaps reaching the top would have done. And not many people can have been there both years and come through the tail and be able to speak about that and the lessons and the perspective, that I think gives me a very unique standing point, because we don't always want to hear the success. We want to hear people who failed and gone through setbacks because I think we can relate to that more. Um, so I guess really I set myself apart in that sense, and I think my age as well. That's certainly tied together. Um, but there's still that demand for Everest. I think it will always have that kind of sense of allure around it, really.
You're leading me to lots of questions with your answers. So, I mean, the next question I'm going to have to ask you, are you going to try again?
I mean, I think after my talks in the Q&A, it's probably the first thing I get asked actually. And I guess my kind of closing advice when I do my talks is don't climb Everest if I'm there. I think the answer is not yet. I mean, I'm too young to say never, but I think I've found other passions and other purpose along the way to get there. That actually success maybe isn't about reaching just the top. There's more challenges, harder things to do, but at the moment, I think I've just got other priorities, and that burning desire to climb Everest that drove me there in the first place isn't there right now, and I'd need to wait for that to come back. And I guess it's better to make sure my mum isn't going to be listening to this as well. So
I might send it to her. So you also mentioned failure. I think there's so many lessons from failure. But the other thing you mentioned, and it's one of the reasons why you and I are talking, because I think you have such great advice to give young up and coming speakers. You are young. So are you willing to share? I mean, I'm not going to share my age. Are you willing to share your age?
yes, I'm 24 now. I've been speaking for 6 years, so since I was 18 really, which I think makes me younger than a lot of speakers in the circuit. Has its advantages and disadvantages, but extremely fortunate and love doing what I'm doing at such a young age, really. And it's really helped me on the journey as well, I think.
And so 18 was very young to start speaking. Were there any barriers to speaking because you were so young? What challenges do you face?
Yeah, quite a few. I think even now to an extent, actually. I mean, just this morning at my talk, I was speaking to quite a lot of senior managers and kind of, quite senior leader roles in the business. And in the Q&A, they commented that it seems counterintuitive being given life experiences from somebody so young. But I think age doesn't really matter too much. I think it's about the experiences we've had. And I hope it's okay to say that I think I've probably had experiences at my age that a lot of people won't have in a lifetime. And I think regardless of that, I'm still hoping I can share what I've learned already in that short time. But I guess there is always going to be that perception of, how can you speak to us about success and leadership when you're only, so young? But ultimately, I think when I start speaking, when I tell the story, I don't preach. I just say, this is what I've learned. Maybe it'll work for you. And at the same time, I think a lot of business executives have often kind of seen their kids in me, and that kind of almost endears them even more. Almost, it's very different to what they've heard before in speakers. And classically, when I did a talk for a big manufacturing business about 2 years ago, the first thing I had in the Q&A was that they saw the young guy in a suit and thought I was there to fix the projector. But actually, that for me is really, really satisfying. And I think occasionally there's the whole sense of, why don't I get kind of a real job, whatever that means. But it's all about experiences, and a lot of people haven't had them at twice my age. So I think it's just about hopefully what I can offer.
I think there are some advantages to your being so young because you are different and we all like something different, which is really great. And you speak a lot of sense, and you're talking about experience and life experience. I think part of it is being able to learn from your experiences. I know that it's taken me a long time to learn a lot of the things that many of the younger generations seem to pick up much more quickly. I don't know. So that's great. So you started at 18, you've done 170, is it 171 now that you've done this morning speech?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, it was 170 last time I counted, and I guess the autumn season's got busy again, so might have gone up a bit. I was at a conference in London on last week, so yeah, it's definitely getting nearer to 200 now. And I'm trying to kind of do less is more. So I was probably doing a lot more in the first years because I said yes to everything, and I'm now becoming more selective because it's tiring, and also I want to, I can't do them all for free now. And so it's been a fairly busy few years, but I think when I go back to where it started, it was actually when I was about 16. It all started because of the Olympic torch. The idea of speaking in public terrified me. I mean, it was my worst nightmare. But after carrying the Olympic torch, I was invited by my old primary school to go and speak to the kids, which is kind of a natural opportunity. And I guess I got the Olympic torch by saying yes, by challenging myself, going out of my comfort zone. And so it only seemed natural that I had the chance to do this as well. So I said yes. I thought, what have I done? But I found speaking in front of 200 kids was actually surprisingly easy and incredibly rewarding. And after doing that, I realized I could do it, despite my stammer. And I could actually speak a lot more fluently in front of a big crowd of people than I could on the phone or one-to-one. So kind of got this curiosity really, and this realizing that I had something that hopefully could inspire other young people. I started contacting a lot of schools, I offered to do more and more. And then naturally, as my adventure journey carried on, there was more demand for me to speak. I had more content. And I never would have imagined that I'd be, speaking to businesses around the UK and Europe. It's been a hell of a journey since, really.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And actually, you touched on it, and I was going to ask you, because anybody listening won't know that you actually have a stammer. You deal with it incredibly well. How do you manage it?
Thank you. I mean, I guess it's probably not uncommon. I mean, there's a lot of speakers and presenters who have a stammer. Um, I think having the stammer I've had since I've been able to speak, really, I think kind of combined with my epilepsy and everything else, it was just one of the things I learned to deal with. When I started speaking, it was kind of very unusual. It was kind of not the sort of career that I would have gone for, but every time I was standing up, I was kind of overcoming my own adversity, which kind of made the talk very human, very authentic. We all want to see our flaws. We don't want to see the polished, perfect side. And I found that when I was very rehearsed, when I knew every word for word by script, I could avoid the stammer in most cases. And the fear used to be a lot bigger, because I never knew whether I was going to have a bad speech day or a good speech day until I started the talk. But I found that even when I did stammer in front of a big crowd of people, it just seemed to gain more respect, and people kind of were almost kind of, like urging me onwards. And it's just part of me. It's part of the story. And I just used to kind of make fun of myself, and people really warmed to that. But then I think as I started doing more and more speaking, it became, I wanted to have more control. So I did a course 3 years ago called the Starfish Project, which really helped me get more fluent. It taught me a breathing technique, which helped me to actually project my voice better as well. And yeah, I have so much more control with the stammer now. But by no means has it gone. I can get complete blocks sometimes, and I guess we can't become complacent either. The thing is now is I can go on the train to a talk. I can't ask for a ticket, or I can't ask for kind of a tea or coffee. But then I can get up and speak to 600 people and not stammer. People don't really believe it. I guess one of the barriers probably I did mention before as well is that when I'm speaking to people think that when you tell people you're a speaker at your age, they kind of don't really give you attention because they think, well, how can you be a speaker so young? But also having the stammer has had the same effect. And I'm really sure that I've lost speaking work and bookings because they've wanted to speak to me on the phone beforehand and obviously heard the stammer rather than how I want to be, how I want to come across. And, I'm sure that has given people the wrong impression. But it's part of the story. It's just helped me to get to where I am, really. Yeah.
No, it's inspirational. It's fantastic for anybody else facing that. It really is inspirational. I want to take you back about your bookings. So you've done very well in a short period of time, and you said you started speaking for free. So you're speaking for free. What would you say are the benefits for having done that? And where did you find those events? You mentioned schools. Is that where you started speaking and where you did most of your practice?
I did start with schools, yeah. I would probably recommend that to any other young speakers because we're either still at school or we've not been long out of school. Although sadly, my own school never actually booked me to go back and speak. But I think they're a very easy way to get practice because they're always looking for speakers. They don't often have any budget or want to pay for a lot for speakers. Schools can be quite a tough crowd, and I find that sometimes they can almost make or break you sometimes. I think they really teach you a lot about yourself speaking in general. And they do get a lot of demand, they get a lot of speakers offering. So sometimes, it's not always easy to get into them. But I think in the first place, it was a natural place for me and other young people because I think another advantage I've had as well is that being young, the schools want somebody that young people can relate to. And even in business, when they have a lot of kind of younger employees and graduates, they kind of want somebody in that kind of millennial mindset. But generally, schools are great. And then I think it led to businesses, which is never part of the plan. But when I was trying to find a sponsor for my Everest trip, Chester Business Club invited me to be their guest speaker. They'd had somebody pull out. Now they have really top speakers, the likes of Ralph Fiennes and prime ministers and things. And then they were trusting an 18-year-old to speak for the first time. So it kind of went from there, really. And the businesses they took a lot from it as well.
I mean, that's a huge risk that they took and a huge opportunity for you. That's amazing. The thing is, often when you're speaking for free, you never know who's in the audience. I mean, in this case, obviously you knew it was a business event, but
Yeah,
you just don't know where it's going to lead to. I think that school audiences are the toughest, actually,
I would
personally.
agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, they have no skin in the game. A client, when they've paid money, they're there to, they want you to succeed. They're going to do everything they can. Kids, it's like, impress me, arms folded, especially if there's hormones going on. I mean, goodness gracious, brave man. So good for you. So tell me, when did you start charging?
Well, actually, just going back to that last point. I mean, I did do a lot of school talks for free in the start, but then I kind of stopped the freebies fairly soon because schools were happy to pay a small amount. And in terms of charging for it though, it was I'll have to think back because 5 years seems a long time now. Uh, I think it was before, it was just before Everest the first time was that Chester Business Club talk. And actually, that was my kind of big break because that was my first pay talk, well, my first business pay talk, and that was £500 plus 500 for my charity. So naturally, I kind of had no choice but to do it. And that was really when the whole light bulb came on. I said, "Wow, people will pay me for this. This is great." I think prior to that, I had actually done a charity awards talk in London, and I think I charged them £150. And I look back and laugh now because nowadays, I kind of won't speak for that lower fee. But at the time, I got my first check, and I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. I think when I'd been working in pubs washing pots before that, it was a big step up. But I think that really sort of set the benchmark was that business club talk, knowing what people were willing to pay and what was kind of expected, and that was when I started to see the value in myself. And naturally, as I did more and more, the fees went up and up. And I guess pricing is the ongoing challenge for me, really. It's knowing the value and knowing what people expect to pay. And because I've not come from a business background, like a lot of speakers, it's really difficult to get the value right, really, without underselling or overselling.
Yeah, that pricing is a big topic and it is a difficult one. And so how do you currently set your price? Do you allow the clients to direct you and you have a minimum that you won't go under?
It is very difficult, and I'm still learning a lot about this, really. I think naturally, as I kind of do more things, I feel that my own experience kind of dictates the price. But at the same time, I think regardless of all that, my age is still going to be the thing that a lot of people see, and they're always a bit hesitant about paying me so much at that age. And I think that generally, I try and find the budget, as we all do, but as we know, events don't like to give that out. And I think for me, it's always that fear of losing a booking often takes over. But I tried to kind of do it based on based on resistance. If people snap me up straight away, I think I've probably undersold myself. Nowadays, I get better at seeing the commercial value, seeing who's there, whether there's kind of a repeat business dynamic, whether there's a networking opportunity, whether I'm going to sell books, how big the business is, whether I'm staying overnight. In the early days, I just used to accept anything I could really get. But nowadays, I just have kind of a minimum fee that I will charge unless it's a very exceptional opportunity. So generally, I just try and work with big, clear numbers and then offer them discounts if I can sell my books or if this can happen or something else. But if it's a repeat booking, I tend to take that into consideration, which has worked quite well for me. There is always that thing then that if I charge too little for one, and then I've got to do the same for another, etc. So it's been a real minefield for me because it's not like a taxi service. It's not like a calculator. It's so variable, and I think is probably my biggest challenge to growth is having that confidence. I think to know my worth. And asking other speakers as well, just sort of try to put myself where I fit.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. Pricing is always the big one. And it's very much harder for you to say, this is my price, than it is for somebody else to say it, which is why so many speakers look for bureaus or representation. So totally get that, completely get that. But you've done very well with that. So that's brilliant.
Thank you.
So tell me, how have you made yourself known then to other bookers, to other businesses? Has it just been by referral, or have you done some outward marketing?
Um, I think in the early days I did very little marketing. I was quite lazy really. It just kind of came to me consistently and regularly enough that I was quite pleased with that, and I didn't need to do a lot. Only in the last sort of 2-3 years has it become kind of a full-time thing, along with my books and ambassador work. But I think generally it's mostly been word of mouth and that kind of repeat business. So the work I did this morning on a leadership program was a company who've booked me must be 20 times now, because they keep doing a repeat program. They have a lot of staff, and there's a training management company who felt that by always offering me to their client was offering them something a bit different, and we work really well, and they just keep bringing me back, which is obviously the best compliment. So that a lot of that has been a massive break in my career. But I think generally, as you know, when you're speaking in front of an audience, you're marketing yourself anyway. And I find a lot now tends to be when I'm speaking to a business, I get recommended to, you know, their partner might be in a different business, or kind of a trading company who works with a number of clients will bring me in to do the same thing. Schools tend to all know each other. Parents at sports awards, at school awards, will have a business, or likewise, the parents in one of my business talks will recommend me to their kids' school because they want the kids to hear the message. So it's a really nice cycle, really. But I think recently, especially in the last year, I've started to be more active in the marketing, actually making direct prospects. But generally, it's grown very well just from my general profile. You know, through my challenges, people read about it in my books and magazines, from directors and CEOs who read my book, who felt, you know, I want my company to hear this. And LinkedIn is an absolute gold mine. Actually, I got my biggest client at the moment, that one who's booked me, you know, a number of times through a LinkedIn post where people had put my name forward to a LinkedIn post, and I guess that recommendation is obviously the way we want to grow our business, and that really means a lot. But I'm on some bureaus, and I'm trying to be a bit more proactive now without grasping as well.
No, I mean, that's so valuable, what you're saying, recommendations and referrals. For me, if a speaker is a good speaker, every time they speak, they're going to get more business. So you are actually practicing that. That's great. Talk to me about the book. Did that make a big difference? How hard was it, first of all, for you to write it? And did it have an impact?
Oh God, I mean, it's like climbing Everest again. I mean, I've got my two books, Another Peak and Icefall, about the Everest experiences and the one that never reached the top. And then Another Peak is more about my last challenge 2 years ago and mental health and the kind of peaks and troughs of that through adventure. So Icefall, I had a fairly big booking for a nuclear energy company, actually, because the director just had an interest in mountains that led him to Icefall to then contact me. And I think really the first book was kind of more of a marketing tool than an income maker, really, because I could sell the book at talks, and that kept people engaged with the journey, gave something to sell, which obviously adds a lot of value. And I just thinking back, I've had so many opportunities and conversations that have been started because of the book, and somebody's read it and passed it on to so and so in a business or in a school, that I've come across my work through there, really. And so it's also now a great way to thank people. You know, if there's a potential client, I'll give them a book, give them something to read more about me, or I'll send them a kind of a book as a thank you, or if they're interested, it just keeps that conversation, that relationship. So I guess it's been more of a marketing tool more than anything, but it certainly has led to some bookings. And writing the book itself is a challenging journey, but like the speaking, I just love being able to share my journey in that sense. And with my stammer, I never really spoke much when I was younger, so I always was much better at expressing myself through books and writing. So yeah, it all works together really well, actually.
That's great. I personally love books. I think they are the best business card that you can have.
I will send you
Um,
one.
yeah, several. Yes, lovely. So fantastic. So wanted to ask you as well. Obviously, you're getting busier and busier. What support do you have in your speaking business? Is it just you?
I mean, busy and busier. I think, as every speaker knows, it's these peaks and troughs, and this time of year is quite busy. All big conferences and the awards, and I've got a few of those this month. Um, but I think it's it's getting used to that cycle, and I'd much rather this than a 9 to 5. But I think in the busy times, it tends to all come at once, and you can get burnt out and quite overwhelmed, but it can be quite a buzz. And I'm just trying to get better at proactively using that quiet time to plan and do the strategy and the new content. But when it is busy, it does tend to be very much just a one-man army, because I'm very particular about how things are done. And when it comes to small details like booking train tickets and things, it's just sometimes easy to do it myself. I've had a bit of help from a virtual assistant with regards to spreadsheets and admin and just keeping track of my feedback. I mean, I keep a massive sheet of all the comments, all the social media feedback I get from my talks, and just doing things that I don't need to do. So I delegate a little bit, but the biggest help I've had with speaking has been, well, from kind of a coaching point of view, that's been an absolutely game changing. But when it comes to the price, and this is like, as I mentioned before, I'll ask, you know, you know, actually friends and mentors. So I'm mentored by the chairman of my sponsor, Westgrove Group, and if I've got a corporate inquiry, I don't know what to quote sometimes. I don't know the business very well, or I'm probably nervous to quote too much. That's when I'll ask for a second opinion on my quote, and I'm not often far off. Sometimes I'm way out. So that being able to ask a second opinion, I think, has been the biggest support.
Yeah, absolutely. I think mentoring, coaching, all of that is so vital. Um, how important do you think having a website, having video, having testimonials is?
I think it's absolutely vital. I mean, I had all that in place anyway before the speaking really took off because of Everest and needing to find sponsors for the expedition. But naturally, yeah, people come to me through my website. I had an inquiry recently where somebody just watched my TEDx talk, and that was how he came across me, and then contacted me about an opportunity. You really got to get out there, especially to stand out in all the noise, and just getting that as professional as possible. I think has been the one thing I've learned more recently. Yeah, you've got to have that there, because I remember listening to a great podcast by Deborah Searle, who is a top speaker in
I know Deborah very well. We
yeah,
go back a long way.
yeah, she's a huge inspiration of mine as well. And a huge support. And I remember listening to a podcast that some of the kind of booking agents for kind of events and conferences had gone through hundreds of speakers, and they chose the one by the kind of just by the quality of the video and the testimonials on their site. So when there's competition, you've got to stand out, and I think it's key, really. That's the one thing I've invested in more recently.
Yeah, brilliant advice. Love that. So, what's next, both in the adventure world and in the speaking world for you?
What's next? Well, there's this again. It's another regular question. I think I'd love to keep on speaking as long as I can, and I think that to do that, I need content. Adventures almost keep the vehicle going. As Ranulph Fiennes famously said, why do I go on expeditions? Is to obviously pay the bills. Now, it's not quite like that for me. It's about kind of making the difference and sharing the journey. But equally, I need to keep the stories fresh. And yeah, I talk about Everest a lot and the avalanche, and that's fine. But the adventures keep me going, keep me challenged, keep me excited about it, and I need to find something for next year. This year, I was working on my book, and various other projects. Just set up a new social enterprise for mental health through the outdoors called Mind Over Mountains. So that's kept me busy. But I'm in the process now of trying to find a big project, something bigger than Climb the UK, kind of Everest scale, but not actually physical height. And that's quite an interesting process, because it's like an entrepreneur. You're trying to invent a product. You're trying to find the right thing that just kind of ticks the box. And it's about being patient. It might take weeks or months to come up with the right idea and just committing and just making the decision. The good thing about doing a UK challenge is last time I was actually doing talks during the challenge. So I was literally turning up on the bike, posting my suit in a box, doing a talk, cycling off, and arriving completely looking bedraggled and sunburned, and just couldn't get more authentic. So I think I'll be doing something in the UK again, starting next spring. So I guess the next 6 months is planning that, and as always, speaking, really just trying to speak more to bigger companies, to bigger audiences, to keep challenging myself. And the diversity is great. And if I can get some more talks abroad, then that will be exciting as well.
Super. So I had to mute myself while you were talking because I have got rain pouring down on me at such a loud volume. People will hear the noise in the background. I think it's calming a bit.
I live in the Lake District, so honestly, it's normal up here. Don't worry.
The noise is incredible. But anyway, so finally, let me ask you a really big question here. If you were to start out again on your speaking career, which is only 6 years old so far, what would you do differently?
Oh, God. Good question. I mean, it's been an incredible journey, and I've loved it. I've hated it sometimes, as we all do, but that's what makes it rewarding. I think I've been coached and mentored from the start, and that for me is really what's I think as I owe my success and the bookings to that, really. And there's still so much more to learn, but I think perhaps really it's could you put me on the spot now? It's like the Q&A questions that stumped you. I think I probably would have invested sooner in a kind of in a good show reel. I think for a long time I was quite lazy, and I think I was getting bookings just by being there, getting repeat bookings and people hearing about me through my website and things. But I was trying to do things cheaply, and I did end up spending quite a bit on speaking coach, and there's little bits of feedback that made me so much more kind of precise, that you need that level of precision and detail in a corporate environment. And that really suddenly pushed my level and my fees up a notch. But I think getting good feedback, I always ask feedback. I'm never happy with a talk. I always want to improve something, which kind of drives some of the repeat clients mad, because I'm always changing perspectives. But I think getting good quality photos and getting good testimonials can be quite hard. But I wish I'd done more of that in the early days, and not trying to get a cheap show reel, because I ended up spending a lot more money having it redone a few times to get one I was happy with. And that for me would have made a big difference. So basically just investing will pay much more back in the long term. And once I was in a position, I was earning enough to do that. I should have done it sooner. So just get feedback and invest in yourself. See it as a long-term investment.
That is wonderful advice to end on. Thank you so much, Alex.
No problem. It's been great to be here, and thank you for your support.